cold at the touch, dead in the eyes, no signs of life no more. I put your love under the knife. Leave me to die here all alone. No signs of life no more, no. A crying dove may never fly. It's black and white. Yeah. Black and white. Oh, 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 oh. It's black and white. Come on, baby. Love, no more, baby. Black and white. Come on, baby. Love, no more, baby. It's black and white. Just let me go. It's only right. For all I know, it's only matter. It's calico. It's black and white. White, white, white. Just let me go. It's only right. For all I know, it's only matter. It's calico. It's black and white. White, white, white. It's black and white. Yeah. Black and white. Oh, 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 oh. It's black and white. It's black and white.
Hello race fans and welcome to the Simracersworld European Porsche Cup Series. My name is Peter MacKay and joining me in the commentary box tonight for this broadcast is Jack Oliphant. And Jack, we're here at Road Atlanta, one of my favourite circuits statesides, and there should be quite a stiff challenge for these drivers.
It will be, yeah. It's got a little bit of everything, hasn't it? The first section is a famously tight and twisty sort of area where the car has to be really on edge over blind crests and harsh braking zones. and then you get sort of an opportunity to get the draft some 2 heavy braking zones into the double right, then a very long opportunity to get into someone's gearbox and get out and try and lunge them into the tight chicane until you finally go through the flying sort of double right-hander at the exit of the course. And that really, again, is sort of yet to be trusting of when you're turning over that crest. So it certainly will challenge the drivers, but I'll tell you what, Pete, I reckon we got the drivers to challenge it.
We do indeed, yeah. Some changes over the last week or two, but we've got a new driver, a new name, and actually a new name right at the top of the timesheets at the moment, which is Josh Cam, the man from Yorkshire, Jet 2 pilot as well, so used to flying some very fast and very expensive machinery, so should get on just fine with this Porsche 911 Cup car. And well, we've already got a real fight for the championship, don't we, Jack? With of course Lewis Ward and Matthew Crisp and Gavin Halls as well. But with Josh arriving into the championship, this is going to mix things up once again.
Yeah, it will, and in fact, you might not be able to see this, Pete, but I'm sure the viewers will at home. Just before we get too deep into qualifying, let's have a look at the European Porsche Cup Series after week 3, the championship order. Because it is quite exciting. Lewis Ward is currently on top. He's had some fantastic performances so far. Interlagos was no exception. He's on 119 points. However, 1 point behind, he was the leader going into Interlagos, is Matthew Crisp with 118. Gavin Halls is in 3rd place, 113 points. More about him in a couple of minutes, talking about Josh Cam, by the way. Ryan Parkins, 107. He actually closed the gap slightly to what he was hoping, obviously, going into Interlagos. And top 5 is finished out by Sam Bentham, who, by the way, we had an interview with him last time, Pete. He admitted that he was a couple of tenths off the top runners, but he's going to do everything he can to try and get there. But so far, best of the rest for Sam Bentham in that 5th place. And if you want to have a quick look, because we've had an awful lot of drivers enter this series so far, here is 11th down to 20th. Paul Clayson's in there as well. Paul Rieger, Jaco van der Plate, Michael Blake, all those sort of good names. Adam McNally, he's looking quick tonight, by the way. But then there's a 3rd row, 21st down to 30th place. Have a look for your favourite drivers on there. Getting towards the bottom end of the order. We've had about 40 drivers here joining us so far in the European Porsche Cup Series. That is how the championship order is broken down. Lewis Ward on top, but only by 1 point. Matthew Crisp, Gavin Halls and Ryan Parkins. And as Pete said before, Josh Cam has thrown his hat into the ring as well, so keep an eye out for that name.
But interestingly, just as we've been running through the championship standings, Gavin Halls to pole position as things stand in qualifying. So very, very interesting stuff indeed. Of course, Gavin now privateer effort as well, formerly racing for Porsche Sport, but taking a new path in his sim racing career. And Gav's been putting in an extraordinary amount of mileage over the last few weeks, specifically focused towards this Porsche 911 Cup car. At the moment, the gap is very small, 3/100ths of a second separating Gavin Halls and Josh Cam. Lewis Ward sitting in 3rd on the timesheets at the moment. Here at Road Atlanta, if you're not familiar with it, well, you're in for a treat. This is a super circuit, very popular on the IMSA calendar, the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship in North America. And really came to the fore as as Gavin Halls is getting in okay. That wasn't Matthew Crisp by any chance, was it?
You know what? You called it right,
dear.
Pete. It was Matthew Crisp. And to be honest, I don't know what Gavin Halls was particularly doing. He slowed right up on the racing line there, didn't he? And Crisp looked like he was on for a quick lap. In fact, he was. He was on a PB up until that last section, so Crisp won't be happy with that at all.
I don't think that's the last we're going to hear of that, unfortunately. That's a bit of a shame, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, group qualifying's an interesting one for me. For me, Jack, because there is always you've got to share the track with your competitors and get on with getting your lap times in. However, it's it can open up all kind. We see it in the British Touring Car Championship group qualifying sessions, the amount of funny business that goes on there. And for me, there's group qualifying sessions are fine until you get drivers going slow on the racing line, which is something you shouldn't really do anyway in any session. But going slow on the racing line, incredibly dangerous. And obviously we're in the virtual world here, so nobody can get hurt. But we see it in motorcycling at the moment, the MotoGP Championship, really struggling with how to get this problem sorted, because obviously in motorcycle racing, it is dangerous if you're going slow on the racing line.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I'm not so accustomed to motorcycle racing myself, but I can imagine, obviously, you're a lot more exposed, aren't you? It is a lot more sort of dangerous and a hell of a lot scarier, I imagine, as well, if you see a driver slowing down and you're doing 120 miles an hour towards them. In these Porsches now, interestingly, going on to the sort of group qualifying, it is interesting, really, isn't it? Because a lot of people would say, well, sim racing needs to try and be as close to real life as possible. Therefore, you can't have individual qualifying sessions in real life. Therefore, you shouldn't have it in the sim world. However, there's another thought process to that, isn't there, Pete? Because the fact that you can have it in the sim world surely means that, it would be preferable to do that. Because I reckon there's a lot of drivers out there who, in the real life sort of setting, would rather have individual qualifying so they didn't have any traffic. And in the sim world, that's possible, so why not use it, sort of thing? It's an interesting take, I think, about sort of competitor to spectator views and how they sometimes differ.
Yeah, for me, I think solo qualifying is the way forward. I think in any context, it's, I just think it's just safer. And like you say, for the purity of competition, the solo qualifying in sim racing, like you say, it's easy done. Oh, Lewis Ward, huge crash at the top of turn 4, but I think it's the solo qualifying is definitely the safer way to do it. But it's because it's all very well saying, oh well, as long as we get the drivers to stop doing it, the drivers will always do it. If there's a tactical advantage, they will play it. And I would say the British Touring Car Championship is a perfect example of where you get drivers dithering around on the racing line and spoiling others' laps. Not on purpose, sometimes, but other times you think, that's it. You don't want to have that debate. It's not a debate we want to be having at all.
No, it's a bit like the Euros is a big thing at the moment, isn't it? Obviously, up and down the country. It's a bit of a taboo subject when covering motorsport, but it's like pundits coming afterwards or players or managers having to talk about VAR. And it's like, well, you want to talk about, or refereeing decisions, you want to talk about the game, you want to talk about the race, for instance. You don't want to come back and start sort of, paddling around that, oh, he blocked me, or I didn't get a clean lap in because of X, Y, and Z, and everything like that. You want to talk about the actual race, the fantastic overtakes and everything like that that comes with it, sort of thing. So it is one of them, as I said, in sim racing, if it's an option, then I definitely don't begrudge people using it. I don't begrudge organisations using it. Some people just think, oh, well, they do it in real life, so we'll do it in this as well. But as I said, I bet if you ask a lot of people in real life qualifying, they'd rather have solo qualifying. You use touring cars as an example. I know full well my brother would rather have solo qualifying because it gives you that opportunity to just get your head down. Even if they only give you 3 or 4 laps to do it, 9 times out of 10, a touring car driver or a high-level driver in any series will be able to get their head down and put in a quick lap within 3 laps. So, I'm sure the high-level guys would be interested in having that formation thrown at them.
I think so. One of my favourite motor racing events of the entire year is the top 10 shootout for pole at the Bathurst 1000, which is one out lap and a hot lap. As we see, talking of hot laps, Gavin Halls has moved the marker on again at 120.394. But yeah, I think fair enough. You have a group sessions in practice, and then the top 10 go for a shootout, one hot lap. I think for me, watching a top pro driver going for one quick lap on their own is actually a spectacle in itself.
It absolutely is. I don't disagree with you in the slightest. Oh, Matthew Chris, we were focusing on him because he purpled Sector 1. Well, he's definitely not purpling Sector 2, that's for sure. You're right, absolutely right. I mean, I've covered a few VLN rounds, even on the sim, covering with Ed May, who, obviously covers with Simracersworld as well. And, it's just a spectacle to see the GT3s around the Nordschleife going absolutely on it. And I know you were covering the real-life Nürburgring 24 Hours, and sometimes we cut to a sort of onboard shot or just following sort of the leaders in the GT3s. And the way the car is planted, the way they're aggressively moving the car at such high confidence and speed is just a spectacle to behold. And really, real race fans, they'll know the sort of attitude of the car. They'll be impressed with the driving skills. And sometimes that's all you really want as a racing fan, isn't it? You'd like to see fantastic overtakes, but sometimes there's something special about watching a driver on the edge in a car that is set up perfectly, is in the sweet spot, and just going for that ultimate lap time.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree. I think it is an amazing spectacle, and definitely one I think we should see more of. So Ryan Parkins, the number 25 machine, a double Porsche Club Great Britain champion, is a very busy boy. Is Ryan? He works in the film industry. He's what you call a focus puller. Now, I'd love to tell you I know what a focus puller is. It's a guy with one of the guys with the camera, I think, involved in filming stuff. Some very, very cool stuff as well. And he's unfortunately having to basically come into the qualifying hot. There's no practice, straight into the car. But Ryan has got such a natural feel for a car and such a calm manner. He's very much like Josh Cam in that sense, actually. They could just sort of hop in and go quick. They're swines, really, aren't they, Jack? How they're able to just jump in and go quick straight away. It takes hours of practice for everybody else.
Absolutely, yeah. Swines is probably a nice word of saying it. As, yeah, I was going to say it's something much harder. I usually describe people like that, but no, it is fantastic to see. As Josh Cam was giving a little bit of a toe there to Ryan Parkins and jumped out of his way, so actually helping each other out a little bit there. Cam's actually jumped to the pits, but Ryan Parkins, I'll tell you what, that's a bit of a collector's item. Mark the date down, Pete MacKay, because Ryan Parkins chucked it off.
Oh, that's one for the scrapbook, yeah. Well, what are we looking at track temperature at the moment, Jack? Because looks like, you know, the car gets quite light going over that crest, and if the track is greasy, then it can maybe cause the car to break away a little bit. Not too bad. 31 degrees Celsius. It's hot enough. I wonder if maybe just got it a little bit lit up. It shows you that, you know, if you're in a GT3 car there, you're absolutely flat out. I mean, completely flat out. And any little twitch, usually the traction control's there and it's got the aero. But a cup car, that gives you a very good example of how much on a knife edge you are all the time with these machines.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because the Porsche, the typical Porsche spin, is effectively just the rear end letting go, isn't it? There's a little bit too much commitment or a little bit too much push on the throttle, and especially going over a lovely corner that is in the penultimate corner, it really does go light in the rear end, doesn't it? And if you do have a little bit too much speed or you have a little bit too much steering lock on, it can just swipe round on you. And then you're a passenger, as Ryan Parkins is a very high-level Porsche driver, and he was a passenger, wasn't he? So if he's not going to catch it, then I don't think many people on this grid will either. Interestingly, though, as they go through the final corner, the car compresses, doesn't it? And actually, you get an awful lot of grip. But even then, we just saw, who was it having a spin round? Another one of the Team Mad cars.
Woodhouse, I think.
In fact, no, it was Kaiser, Jerome Kaiser in Team Mad Racing 2. So there's a little bit of a a question mark over which Team Mad drivers are racing for which team, but they've actually distinguished it now. It's Team Mad 1 and Team Mad 2. We're looking at Miguel Freitas. He's racing for Team Mad 1 with Mark Woodhouse. And then there's Jerome Kaiser and one other driver who I am missing right now for some reason, but they're in the Team Mad 2.
So he's a mad one, and he's mad too. Yes,
exactly that. That must be how they distinguished it.
Oh, getting the dad jokes in. We're not even out of qualifying yet. Yes. So at the moment, it's Gavin Holt from Josh Cam, from Matthew Crisp, from Lewis Ward, from Miguel Freitas. So all of those top championship protagonists right up there at the sharp end. And I always think if you're on those first couple of rows, you're in a good spot. And but the thing is, I tell you where I wouldn't want to be in this race, Jack, is in the mid pack, because going up into that opening sector at Road Atlanta off a standing start, the tires are cold, the brakes are cold, and it is such a roller coaster, uphill roller coaster, and you're trying to place the car, and it really becomes all one line, and people try to go 2 and 3 wide, and you end up with a lot of argy-bargy. So I wouldn't want to be stuck in the middle of in the eye of the storm. As Sam Bentham goes up to third, gets we should call him the cat, Sam the Cat Bentham amongst the pigeons.
Exactly. Worth noting as well, Josh Cam, look at his name, he's got ahead of Gavin Holt by 200ths of a second. You're talking about Sam Bentham as the cat. Josh Cam is coming into something. Let's call him the Spanner, because he's put a spanner in the works, hasn't he? Well, he probably wouldn't thank me for that. Thank me for that nickname. PJ Glayson's probably the only driver really out there at the moment setting a quick time. He's PB'd Sector 1 and Sector 2. I've also kept the distinction between the sort of top time and everybody else's on the left hand side. Top 16 currently separated by less than a second. PJ Clayson's going on the outside of the circuit, not necessarily the quickest, but he's making it work as he's making new track left, right and centre. Let's see what he can do. It's 121.191 to beat for PJ. He was going very well last time out for Team 11. In fact, Team 11 as a whole were going brilliantly because, of course, Lewis Ward is obviously Team 11 as well. PJ with a fantastic recovery drive at Interlagos. Will he need to recover this time round? I think he's set the lap time, but it hasn't improved. Oh, it's disallowed. It's 121.191 as it stands for PJ.
Okay, well, that's more or less all she wrote. In fact, it is. We are ready to go racing here at Road Atlanta for the first race here with round 7 of the Simracersworld European Porsche Cup Series. Josh Cam straight in and straight on pole position by 0.02 of a second from Gavin Halls on the front row of the grid. Sam Bentham and Matthew Crisp will start on row 2 with Lewis Ward and Miguel Freitas on row 3. Adam Delmont, Ryan Parkins, Mark Woodhouse and Austin Greatorex will round out the top 10. Paul Riga will start from 11th alongside PJ Claessens. Row 7 will be Carl Sharkey and Matteo Sufi, followed by Jeroen Kaiser, Michael Blake, Lee Damer, Joel Eulenbroek, Jaco van der Plat and Niels de Kuiper will round out your top 20. With the last 3 drivers, Paul Godden, Jens Goossens and Milan Phaetons. 23 cars here at Road Atlanta. The first race, 30 minutes long, and then their feature race, 40 minutes long. Now, did I hear over the week, Jack, that there were some drivers stretching the fuel all the way through to the end of the feature without a stop?
Absolutely incredible. I can't believe you missed it, to be honest, Pete, but I was under the impression throughout the entire series that it was a mandatory pit stop, because I think we said it on the first race or something like that. But it's not. Apparently it's not. It's dictated by fuel. And I think it was Matthew Crisp was one of the drivers who managed to just stretch it for as long as humanly possible and got a fantastic result because of it, because they didn't need to come into the pits. So, yeah, I mean, it was awesome. It was absolutely amazing. And hopefully we have some fantastic drama that is, lives up to last week, tonight.
Well, will anybody try it here? You would think the Interlagos, you think, where do you save fuel there? Well, we'll find out. There's no problem with that in this race. This is the sprint race. The lights begin to come up. The revs rise. Josh Cam on pole position, and off we go. We're racing in Brazelton, Georgia. It's a pretty good start there from Gavin Halls. In fact, I think he might get the whole shot from second on the grid. He will indeed. So Josh Cam a little bit steady away. So Gavin Halls leads going up the hill towards turn 3. Sam Bentham in third, and Ward and Ward and Crisp going side by side, and Ward in the wall! Ward in the wall! And I think that was Crisp they made contact with.
Yeah, may well have it. I'll keep an eye. We'll go back and have a look at that. But what a start by Gavin Halls to overtake Josh Cam off the start line. But Sam Bentham, look how aggressive he's been. He's filling the mirrors already in the number 7 car on Josh Cam, seeing what he can get out of it. But you know Josh Cam very well, Pete, like you said before. You know how calm he is. He's going to absorb this pressure really rather well, I expect.
Absolutely, yeah, you're spot on there, Jack. Josh is so level-headed. He's a very experienced kart racer as well, and yeah, doesn't get flustered too easily. I mean, this is a guy who's in charge of flying 100, drunk Brits abroad over to Mallorca, so he's used to pressure. This is nothing for Josh as his job as a Jet 2 pilot. But yeah, oh my word, it's a T-bone steak. Miguel Freitas making a big error there and just cleaning out poor Sam Bentham. Deary me.
Yeah, having a look for that one, to be honest. We'll just skip to the
turn
drivers.
10A, 10B, wow.
Yeah, it was Sam Bentham, yeah, so in fact that's Sam coming back on track. The highlights is going
Watch the end badges. Oh, Freitas just misses his point and thinks, oh, dear me. If you're Sam Bentham, you ought to have given you a fright, actually.
Yeah, I think the less we see that, the better, I think, especially for Freitas' point of view, because that was,
clumsy.
As you say, yeah, clumsy, novice plate stuff, shall we say, from Freitas. We don't normally see that kind of move coming in here, but look at this. The top 2 have absolutely pulled away because Bentham got T-boned, as he said. So Gavin Halls and Josh Cam. And although Josh Cam obviously would like the race win, and Gavin Halls would like to keep him at bay for as long as possible, and they like to race close to each other, this isn't hurting Gavin Hall's championship bout at all, is it? Because look at the gap it is between himself and the next realistic championship contender. In fact, you have to look all the way down to 6th place for Ryan Parkins.
Well, I have to say, you've got to take your hat off to Austin Greatorex. Started at the wrong end of the top 10. He's up to third already. How on earth does he manage that? And well, Matt Parkins and Crisp now having a right old ding-dong here as well. Paul Riga right behind there too. Carl Sharkey, and oh, goodness, that's the closest you'll see Ryan Parkins getting to somebody there. So Crisp, I would think that Crisp will probably be a bit hot under the collar after qualifying, quite honestly. And understandably so. I think that he'll need to kind of calm down a bit now and just get down to business and run that pace that he knows he can. Wow, what a dramatic start to this motor race here in the Simracersworld Porsche Cup. Gavin Hall's away at the front with Josh Cam right behind him. The thing is, Josh Cam, he doesn't have a championship to worry about, and that means that he can afford to take the risks that arguably Gavin Halls can't, which is a fascinating dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely is, and I think I'm just going to have a very quick look at that first incident that we saw at all, which involved, of course, Lewis Ward. And just going to slow it down here. Look at that, he gets the apex as Lewis. Now, I'm wondering if he slides out a little bit wide. No, he doesn't, does he? But he... Oh, no, he does. The rear end sliding already. Yeah, so it's actually Lewis Ward slides it on his own on cold tyres.
Good spot, great spot. Well, we mentioned it before, didn't we? Those Michelins, they need a bit of time to come in, and especially going over the curbs and the hop. It's very bumpy over there, and yeah, just caught Lewis Ward out, and yeah, Matthew Crisp is trying to almost get out the way, but and yeah, fortunately got through without being collected there. But whoa! Speaking of, dearie me, Matteo Sufi colliding there. Now, who was that? Was that Jaco van der Plat?
No, it was Lee Deemer.
Oh, Lee Deemer.
Have a look at this.
Oh, Pete. No. Oh, they merged to almost exactly the same point from two completely different sides of the track. Just, oh, it was bad luck there, really.
I was going to say, well, if you look at Matteo Sufi, he'll be in the blind spot here, won't he? That's slightly. Just go back and watch it one more time. Sufi will be in the blind spot of Lee Deemer, so it's interesting. Some people might say that Lee Deemer has got his nose ahead, but he's coming wide, he's going to take that apex. Where's Sufi supposed to go, you could argue?
Nowhere.
He's supposed to hit the brakes, maybe, but I think it's nowhere. I think he's in his blind spot, and that's a racing incident, unfortunately. It has worked out quite well for Michael Blake.
It has, yeah, indeed. Yeah, Michael Blake just getting past. Yeah, great spot there. I think, yeah, Sufi was holding his line and, yeah, just got kind of swiped a bit there. So, that's a shame, but that's Road Atlanta. We will expect a high rate of attrition here because it is a tough race circuit. The overtaking opportunities mainly centre around this corner here, turn 10A and 10B, this chicane that was put in 1997, just after Dr. Don Penoz bought the circuit before launching the first ever Petit Le Mans, which is a huge part of the global endurance racing calendar. And do you know, actually, and of course, buying a race circuit is quite an expensive endeavour, but Dr. Don Penoz, do you know how he made his money, the previous owner of this circuit? He invented the nicotine patch.
Really?
Yep.
I tell you what, you do come across, like, obviously, because a lot of things can make a lot of people rich that you just don't think about. I came across a guy who, he lived in the same village as me, actually, and he was extremely rich. I'll just go back to him in a second. Adam Delmont going very wide there and losing an awful lot of places. Not entirely sure what happened to him, but there may have been a contact with Paul Golden. Because Paul Golden came off the track at the same time, but it might have just been a completely different separate incident, and it was. Adam Delmont just riding the curves a little bit too hard on the exit and ends up spitting into the wall. And that's a heavily damaged Porsche 911 Cup car that he's got going on there. Although you can't really see it necessarily, because obviously that paintwork is rather masking things. It's a bit hectic as it is, shall we say.
It is, yeah. There's a lot of colour going on, isn't there, for sure. Good battle, good start for Mark Woodhouse, battling away with PJ Claessens, and Matthew Crisp in there, mired back in 6th position at the moment, and he'll be wanting to try and make at least a few spots forward as Josh Cam sets his personal best about a 10th quicker than Hall's that time by, and they're, dear me, they're lapping so much quicker than the rest of the field, about a half a second quicker than their nearest competitors. In fact, the nearest driver actually on pace, bizarrely, is Matthew Crisp, despite being stuck behind PJ Clayton's here, which is interesting. So we'll see how that one plays out over the next 23 minutes. Long race here as well for the drivers, particularly at Road Atlanta, where it's very, very easy to make an error. Especially in these cars, there's so much on a knife edge that you've got to be on your very best. But yeah, Dr. Don Penos, he put a lot of money into the circuit and really wanted to. He was actually the founder of the American Le Mans series. So yeah, a man who's given a lot to the sport.
Yeah, interesting, really, because obviously he's made his name in another industry, but then he's just obviously followed his passion. And really, motorsport is a passion game, isn't it? It's interesting to see. Although this is very interesting as well, as PJ Clayton looks up the inside. And I thought he was going to have it, actually, but it looks like Woodhouse. I tell you what, hello, Matthew Crisp. Goodbye, PJ Clayton's, because Mark Woodhouse is going to be overtaken here by Matthew Crisp. He has indeed, and Ryan Parkins is smelling a top 5 as well.
Yeah, classic Ryan Parkins, just sort of sits there waiting for the opportunities and then pounces as and when appropriate. And he's got it up the inside here of Woodhouse at turn 1. Can't quite get the move done properly. So he'll have to filter in behind, but he'll take his opportunity and wait for. There you go. Tiny little error from Mark Woodhouse, and Parkins just slips by. Up to the top 5 he goes. And Clayson's, I think, did he get through without spinning there? So just a little bit of a hip check there from Woodhouse. And Clayson's, does he get through okay? No, he just pulls it up. Interesting.
That's very strange. I'm not entirely sure what would have caused Clayson's to do such a thing. But I tell you what, look at these two drivers right at the front. Gavin Halls and Josh Cam right at the front, 4 seconds ahead of Austin Gray2X, who, by the way, has got about 4 seconds backwards as well, 3 seconds backwards to Matthew Crisp now, who I'm sure will be hoping to hunt down Austin Gray2X, but Austin has a fair bit of pace behind him as well. Don't expect him go lying down and making it easy for him. But I tell you what, Gavin Halls and Josh Cam, what do you reckon, Pete? I mean, you know these guys a little bit better than me. Do you reckon they're just getting through the race and banking the points from Gavin Hall's perspective? Will Josh Cam really push him come the last 5 minutes, or do you reckon they're really on the limit now and they're just pushing each other for lap times?
I think, well, the one thing for sure is that Josh doesn't have a championship to think about. So if he has the pace to go for it, he will. He'll not be sitting there and taking the championship points. He doesn't. That's not of concern to him. So you would think, okay, well, maybe Gavin Halls might not push it that hard. However, Gavin Halls isn't your typical driver. He's such a hard charger, and it goes for every single gap. Has one speed, and it's 100%. So if Josh does make a move, Gav will defend it as hard as he possibly can, and will try to retaliate straight away with almost no, shall we say, consideration for the championship. That's almost a kind of result of what happens during the races, if you like. So yeah, this is a fascinating dynamic here. At the moment, they're sizing each other up. And with the way the draft works on that long back straight here at Road Atlanta, who knows? We could see Josh make a move later on in the race, but there's still plenty of time. And at the moment, it's Gavin Halls who's having to do the heavy lifting, isn't he? Whereas Josh Cam can sort of sit there and size him up.
Yeah, it is indeed. But another interesting fight between a Porsche Sport driver is this one here between Matthew Crisp. So this is for championship relevance, isn't it, really? I mean, you mentioned Josh obviously not worrying about it at all, but Matthew Crisp and Ryan Parkins absolutely are. If you do hear a little ping, so I've seen some people on the YouTube comments say that you can hear some Facebook noises. Yes, that is me. Sorry, I do normally go around and mute all my conversations. I have muted them now when people are talking, so hopefully we don't get any more of that, but I do apologise. I'll mute them as soon as I hear them, but please do keep pointing them out in case I don't.
Jealous. I'm just jealous you've got that many mates.
They're all the same group of mates. They've just got 5 different group chats for some reason. I really don't know why we do it, but it's the way it goes these times, isn't it, at the moment? Fantastic battles up and down the circuit, though. I mentioned Josh Cam. I mentioned Ryan Parkins. Carl Sharkey as well is in a little bit of a battle with Paul Rieger, but how much of a battle, I'm not entirely sure that's going to be, because obviously they work quite closely together. And Pete, I'll tell you what we haven't done. We haven't mentioned our fantastic sponsors, have we? Shark e-bikes or Simmortal Sim Racing Models. I mentioned them about 52 times at Interlagos, because obviously we haven't mentioned them enough in the previous rounds. But tonight, obviously, they're still partnering with us, and they're still sponsoring a fantastic event. And by the looks of it, we're about to see Ryan Parkins and the Midas Shark e-bikes car try and go around Matthew Crisp.
Yeah, well, Ryan Parkins really on the charge here as well. And look at that, Matthew Crisp goes very defensive indeed. That might just, you can just hold that inside line and then let the car run out, and that can kill the speed of the driver behind you as well. But this is getting really tight and close now. Mistake for Crisp. Mistake for Chris, a little twitch on the entry to turn 3 there, and has to give best. Now, he may well have a slowdown penalty to serve as well. He's picked up a cone for good luck. Okay, so it's not been an easy day at the office for Matthew Crisp so far, but who knows, we'll see what he can do. He was certainly a master tactician last week in the feature race. We'll see what he can do this time. I think, is that a Fernando Alonso helmet that he's got on there as well? And he's a man who's a tactician, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, your eyes are a lot better than mine if you can figure that one out from inside the car, to be honest. But really unusual from Matthew Crisp. I mean, he may not be a squeaky clean reputation as the likes of Ryan Parkinson, so it's maybe not as big a deal. But let's just have a look. I mean, this is unusual because Matthew Crisp obviously is second in the championship. That's not the sort of move you think you'd see from a driver that far up, and you can see a cone underneath it, can't you? I wonder if that's hurting the aerodynamics at all. Interestingly, I don't think he had to serve a slowdown, because he would have had to serve it before he got onto the start-finish straight, but he is a little bit further back than Ryan Parkins now by a second and a half, and he's into the grasp of Mark Woodhouse. So I think Matthew Crisp is going to actually have a headache from behind before he can think about going forward.
Yeah, looks like it. It looks like that's where his initial concern may lie. Now, you see, I tell you what, this has been a heck of a drive from Lewis Ward. Had a huge hit into the wall at turn 3 on lap 1, and he's managed to get himself up into 9th position. These sort of drives are critical to a championship campaign. There's always going to be the odd thing that goes wrong, but it's how you bounce back from them. And that car must be horrible to drive right now, because it is so smashed to bits at the front, and still Lewis is wheeling it around, and he's going to score decent points. And of course, with the reverse grid for race 2, he's going to have a decent grid spot as well. So across the whole meeting, he's done well as Michael Blake has a spin.
Yeah, Michael Blake does. He almost has a spin, let's say, but he has ended up off the track, hasn't he? So luckily he kept it out the wall, but he has now dropped down to 15th. So that little battle we were about to see has just disintegrated slightly. But you're absolutely right. I mean, that must be an absolute pig. It probably drives worse than it looks, and it looks pretty bad, doesn't it? No front splitter, no front end, probably a bit of a brick in the air as well, so probably down on sort of top speed as well. And yet, he's still doing a fantastic job into the top 9. He's only 4 places down from where he started. This is a championship drive, isn't it? You need to have these kind of drives. When it goes bad, you need to pick yourself up and get going and score as many points as you can, because it's the driver who, you know, when it goes bad, you need to be able to still pick up those points, and those are the drivers that win championships. I was just basically repeating myself twice then because I lost my train of thought, but you get what I mean, Pete.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, 100%. I know what you mean. Good drive from Paul Riga here as we go past the halfway point in the 999 machine, with the 911 machine of Carl Sharkey right behind. And of course, Carl, as we mentioned, Carl of Sharkey of Shark e-bikes. And I tell you what, if you're, of course, e-bikes very much a revolution at the moment, because you think, I quite like the idea of cycling, but of course, here in the UK, we live in a relatively hilly. It's not like being in the Netherlands where everything's flat. It can be a bit of a chore sometimes. So get yourself an e-bike and you just get that boost of torque going up the straight as Riga pulls across and Sharkey goes by. I wonder if there's a little bit of formation flying there. I think they might well draft back and forth with one another and try to work their way forward. Very clever indeed there from the Porsche Sport guys. But yes, I tell you what, if you fancy doing a bit of Deliveroo, e-bike's perfect for that.
Yeah, unfortunately, the cost of an e-bike, even from Shark e-bikes, which are very well reasonably priced, you'd still be probably working for Deliveroo for about 6 months, wouldn't you, before you get it? Because they pay is awful. But
well, if you're going to buy one anyway,
well, that's very true.
Well,
if you're going to buy one
some
anyway,
back.
yeah, exactly. It's an opportunity to get put that money towards it, I suppose, isn't it? I mean, yeah, if the UK or any sort of those kind of countries that have those ups and downs, hilly sections, then absolutely worthwhile. I was actually having a look at them, not Shark e-bikes specifically, but I was actually having a look at the e-bike sort of section in a shop that I was in today. And to be honest, they look like a smart bit of kit, you know, and I always thought, oh, they're just bikes with a battery strapped on the side. Well, in essence they are, but they seem to work really well, don't they? And they seem to get they're becoming more and more popular because people are buying into it, hence why people like Shark e-bikes are able to sponsor and partner a series like us. So do please, in the description below, go and check them out, as well as Simmortal Sim Racing Models. You don't really have to explain what Simmortal Sim Racing Models supply, but if you are a collector, then you can by all means go and have a look at what they have to offer.
People might be a bit disappointed when they realise it's die-cast models of cars rather than super models.
I didn't think that, you know. I think I just much prefer models of cars and supermodels. I think that just be how my brain
would that be like would sim racing models be anime?
Oh God! Okay, let's go back to racing. Because we can go down a dangerous route about models and anime. I think we need to keep on Ryan Parkins and Matthew Crisp. Which would make an interesting anime. No, I'm kidding. I'm going away from it. Alcantech NHR chasing at Porsche Sport 912. Obviously, Matthew Crisp losing 1 position since the start, but Ryan Parkins gaining 4. Austin Greatorex, by the way, up 7 places, and I just cut away from that fight as it started to get interesting. Oh, very interesting.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Oh, this isn't good for either driver. Oh, and I think Woodhouse has spun as well. He's spun at the very next corner. So turn 6, Crisp and Parkins off, and Woodhouse off at turn 7. So the order shakes up completely. And that puts Carl Sharkey pedal. Dearie me. Oh dear, 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 dear. Oh, there's flashing of the lights from Lewis Ward saying, after you guys. Dear me, this is going to get spicy now. Into turn 10A. Parkins very late on the brakes, takes the move. So, oh dear, this has been a very spicy start to the meeting, Jack.
Rather than characteristic, I think people are getting desperate for those championship points, aren't they? And they're fighting in an unusual position for where they normally find themselves in, obviously. I mean, Crisp and Parkins are now lost out place. I mean, amazingly, Parkins he qualified in 9th, so he's still doing pretty well for where he qualified. But Lewis Ward, he's knocking around now, isn't he? All of a sudden, and these are the championship contenders that he's now fighting against. And look at this! Huge contact, Matthew Crisp at the inside of Ryan Parkins and almost sent him flying. What he has done is sent him into the wall. And not the good kind of flying that Josh Cam normally does. It's the bad kind where he ends up in the tyre wall.
Well, that part of the circuit at Road Atlanta, it's not advisable if you're in a prototype to go around a GT car there because it's just one line. So when you're in 2 identically matched cars, it's never going to end well. And well, there you go. There's a perfect example. Brian Parkins straight in the wall, and Crisp miraculously carrying on with minimal damage there. But he's down to 12th position, and all of a sudden, that what was a bit of a really good recovery job, and what was a good drive has kind of gone downhill very quickly. So now we have a Porsche Sport 2, 3, 4, 5 at the moment.
Yeah, it's not bad for some, isn't it? I'm just going to go and have a very quick look and see if we can get a replay of this, because as you're right, it's not advisable, and that's a big lunge, isn't it? A lot of speed being carried in there by Crisp, and Parkins has actually had to dive straight back into the pits, so that's clearly not helped him at all, and he's still in the pits now. So Parkins pretty much had this race written off now, all because of an overly ambitious lunge, I should say, by Matthew Crisp. I think they'll probably be having a look at that one.
Yeah, the stewards are going to have a lot to do, that's for sure. I don't envy you, Bart Daleman. Hello to you. Hope you're well. Goodness me, what a dramatic race this has been. Well, we're into the last 10 minutes now, and Sharkey and Riga battling now over 4th position. So they've really done well. They've worked together and made their way up to the front. So now they can maybe have a bit of their own battle. Now they're coming down the very long back straight here at Road Atlanta, so long that the former owners of the circuit, the Whittington brothers, who owned it in the late 70s and early 80s, they had Mustang planes, like ex-army planes, that they used to, their own private planes that they used to land on the circuit. They would actually radio in and say, "Yeah, you need to throw a red flag and get everybody off the circuit because we're coming in to land."
What, whilst the race meetings were on?
Oh yeah. They were those sorts of people. The put it this way: the way they earned their money, you wouldn't argue with them. They're not people you would say no to. I'll just say that.
Well, fair play. I was going to say, I mean, Mr.
Illicit
Palmer.
never.
Yeah, at least Mr. Palmer, he gets a lot of stick for MSV circuits, Snetterton, Alton Park, Donington, Brands Hatch, a few others. And at least he lands his helicopters on the designated helicopter pad. I mean, he likes to make an entrance, don't get me wrong, but at least he has his own pad. He doesn't just make them stop the race and go, "Yep, I'm coming into land, just everybody red flag, or I'll hit you off," basically. Your choice.
Yeah, and I don't think you'd want to answer to a Bill or a Don Whittington in those days. Definitely not. Definitely not. But then once they actually sold the circuit to a guy called Randy Lanier, who was the IMSA champion in 1984, and another man who made his money through import and distribution. Let's just say that.
Illicit manners is probably
illicit import and distribution, and all three of them ended up in prison. Put it that way.
Oh God. No wonder they went to the nicotine guy in the end.
Well, yeah, the nicotine guy comes in and sweeps the place up.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
actually, to be fair, that's why the circuit is such a good facility today. In fact, when Dr. Don Penos bought it, it needed money spent on it badly, and he did so. And that's why it's such a good facility, is because so if you've ever bought a nicotine patch, you can give yourself an extra pat in the back that you've funded the great circuit that is Road Atlanta.
Yeah, exactly. Celebrate the little wins, as I think that's roughly what the slogan is, isn't it? Roughly. Miguel Phaetons, Neil, and Michael Blake. Now, this sort of outside the top 10 battle has been bubbling away somewhat, hasn't it? I mean, you got the likes of Sam Bentham trying to catch these two up now. Recovering driver. You got Lee Deemer, you would argue, as a recovering driver. Miguel Freitas, Adam Delmont, Matthew. In fact, basically everyone behind Milan Phaetons here is what you would argue out of position. Sam Bentham, Sufi, Delmont, Freitas, Deemer. Ullenbrook is, an unknown sort of characteristic. He's joined the season a little bit late. But as Phaetons is looking towards Neil to Cooper, he's gained 7 positions. However, I think... No, sorry, it lagged out. I thought Gavin Halls had come into the pits then. But yeah, interesting that everybody behind Mr. Phaetons is obviously recovering. So this is essentially a lot of gained positions. I mean, Phaetons has gained 9 positions since the start of the race, purely by everybody crashing off. Yeah,
and Lewis Ward up to 7th. Oh, I know. We might have an issue for Gavin Halls. Just saw a little blip there on the timing screen. Now, he's pulled away from Josh Cam dramatically, but I wonder if he's the internet in Bahrain, where Gavin lives, is intermittent sometimes. And I want maybe just a little bit of a blip out there, but what looks like to have steadied itself, thankfully. But really has pulled away from Josh Cam in the last few laps.
Well, I mean, when you were talking a little bit before, I was genuinely trying to see if there was a place where Josh Cam had span off or something, because the gap really didn't look like it was going to form like this large, and it just looks like Josh Cam has accepted that he's going to get 2nd place here. His lap times are about half a second back from Gavin Halls in that last lap, so yeah, interesting. 3 seconds the gap now between Cam and Halls. I mean, it's visually large. The closest battle you have on circuit is actually still this battle here, but Sam Bentham has joined the running. So Sam trying to recover a little bit and maybe get towards that top 10 reverse grid. But it's only about 4 minutes left. Whoa. Oh, that's going to help him out as Niels de Cooper spins round.
Oh, he's quiped over. Oh, dear. Not so good. This is interesting with Gavin Halls at the front, because this is exactly what he did at Hockenheim in the very first race of the championship. He really came strong in the last sort of half to a third of the race, and that seems to be what's happening here as well. So, you know, interesting. We know that that Gavin puts in a lot of mileage, a lot of preparation for these races, and I wonder if that's he knows how to make the tyre last and not to overheat it just by sheer mileage and knowing how the tyre and how the car behaves. Also, as the fuel load comes off as well, because these cars, of course, they've got the 4-litre engine right out the back of the car, It's not in the middle, it's in the rear of a Porsche 911, but the fuel tank is in the front. So as the fuel tank lightens up, that changes the balance of the car a lot. And I think that this is where Gavin's preparation is coming good.
Yeah, there's quite a lot that goes into iRacing, isn't there? And most sims these days, because normally that wouldn't even be, let's say 5 years ago even, that wouldn't even cross your mind as a potential sort of characteristic. The fact that the front end will get lighter as the fuel gets burnt along. You'd just think it would stay the same sort of thing. And it really comes on leaps and bounds, doesn't it, sim racing, over the past couple of years in sort of simulating those realistic aspects of the cars. And the physics in iRacing maybe needs a little bit of work here and there. We see some cars flipping over or jumping out of stadiums when they really don't deserve to be, when they're going 10 miles an hour. But when it comes to actually sort of modelling how the car changes and evolves over the course of the race, it really is very good. And that sort of thing is a sort of an example of that. 2 minutes to go. Ryan Parkins, I can see, is in the YouTube chat. Hello to you, Parkins, although I'm pretty sure you'd rather be still behind the car, behind the wheel of your Porsche. Hopefully you come back strong in race number 2. Let's have a little bit of a rundown before we get going on the final couple of laps. Gavin Halls is in first place. Josh Cam is in second, as we mentioned. Austin Greatorex still in a fantastic position in third place, with no one really affecting him behind. Paul Rieger and Carl Sharkey have both made up over 7 places each, pretty much. They're in fourth and fifth. Mark Woodhouse in sixth. Lewis Ward, what could be argued as a pretty poor finishing position for him, would be, if you look at the grand scheme of things and look at the context, is actually a fantastic finishing position for him if he can keep it there. But it looks like the white flag lap is out for Gavin Halls. But I'm just having a look at Lewis Ward. There's an opportunity for another place here, Pete.
There is. I think Lewis Ward will be absolutely dancing a jig after this, because what really could have been just race over at that point. It was such a big hit. This is such tenacity, and this is the tenacity that wins championships, because this, what could have been a huge loss of points, Lewis Ward has really gritted his teeth and profited from a lot of other drivers throwing it at the scenery, to be brutal about it. So really impressive drive from the number 97 car, and of course we'll have a pretty decent grid spot compared to his rivals for the reverse grid, where he'll get another clean go at it with a fully repaired car. So yeah, very good. We are getting confirmation that Josh Cam did have a brief trip through the gravel, so that did allow Gavin Halls that little bit of a gap as well. So thanks to the Luke at Porsche Sport for letting us know about that. But you tell you what, you got to take your hat off to Austin Greatorex. He's probably had quite a lonely race there in third, but doing what Austin does, just clicking off laps one after the other. But our leaders, there we are. Gavin Halls coming around turn 10A and 10B for the final time. Checkered flag is in the air. Gavin Halls is your winner here in round 7 of the Simracersworld European Porsche Cup. What a drive with Josh Cam. I mean, climbs out the cockpit of one machine and into another and straight onto the podium. What a driver. And Austin Greatorex, as we said, really steady drive again to third position from 10th on the grid, don't forget.
Absolutely, and we're just looking a little bit further back at Mark Woodhouse, because he's got Carl Sharkey and Paul Rieger ahead of him. Then Lewis Ward comes home in 7th position. But you got to have a look at this, because Sam Bentham is trying to make the best of a bad situation. He's not going to get the reverse grid pole, but he's still going to try and do his best to start as high up the order as he can. He's going to come across the line potentially in 11th place here, just ahead of Michael Blake. He started a long way back to, well, he didn't start a long way back, he ended up a long way back, did Sam Bentham. Good recovery drive by him, but I think the happiest man on the race at the moment on the Road Atlanta grid will be Lewis Ward in 7th, because that means he'll be starting about 4th in the second race, and he'll fancy his chances from there.
Yeah, I think that could be pivotal to Lewis Ward's championship chances, because yeah, we stress it a lot, but right down the bottom, he would have been dead last actually, and then fought his way all the way back up into the real big point scoring positions. So let's have a look at the results then and see how your favourite drivers finished. Gavin Halls wins by 3.1 seconds from Josh Cam, with Austin Greatorex rounding out the podium positions. Paul Rieger finished in 4th, followed by Carl Sharkey, Mark Woodhouse, Lewis Ward, Jeroen Kaiser, Jens Goossens and Jaco van der Plat rounding out the top 10. Sam Bentham recovered to 11th after a bit of poor fortune in the opening laps, with Michael Blake, Matthew Crisp, Matteo Sufi and Niles de Kuiper rounding out the top 15. Milan Phaetons was 16th, followed by Miguel Freitas and Adam Del Monte. And the last couple, Joe Eulenbroek, Ryan Parkins, Lee Damer, Paul Godden, and PJ Claessens round out our 23-car field. So I tell you what, Jack, if that was controversial and that was exciting, well, goodness knows what the reverse grid is going to be like with pit stops as well. Don't forget.
Well, now I'm half expecting drivers to attempt to go all the way through the race without pit stopping, which could, I mean, if they get it wrong, it could be monumental, couldn't it? I mean, I reckon a lot of drivers will have been using that first 30-minute race where normally they wouldn't look necessarily at how much fuel they had left over, but I reckon they'll be looking at how much fuel they've got left over right now to see whether they can really eke it out. I mean, obviously in iRacing, saving fuel doesn't matter about when you change up of gears. Apparently, it is how your throttle application is. So whether you put 80% or 100% throttle application, you can save fuel. So you can be in second gear doing 100 miles an hour, revving the nuts off something, and that won't drink any more fuel than if you were in fourth gear doing 100 miles an hour. As long as you had your foot flat to the floor, you're drinking the same amount of fluid. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they're going to approach it and whether people will actually change their strategies now and whether they're in the garage right now, because we've got about a 5-minute wait until we go to the actual next race, and whether they're there sort of trying to calculate that, getting the calculators out, or whether they're just going to stick to the original plan and just go out there and try and drive as hard as they can.
Well, again, it'll come down to the drivers that have put in the mileage and have tested it in real world, because you can calculate as much as you want, but you always have to do a dry run or to do a practice run to see what the car will do and will it do it. And interestingly, looking at the track temperature, 36 degrees Celsius now on the track. So the track actually starting to heat up a little bit even more. Now that is to the point where it is going to get really greasy. Now, if you're on the fence of doing the fuel safe strategy and not pitting, or actually just going full guts away and then pitting to take fuel on board, that might swing you in the favor of fuel saving, because if you're taking your time and using less throttle, and obviously you're going to use less fuel. And when the track's as slippy and as greasy as it gets when it gets hot, that might lean people towards that fuel saving tactic possibly.
Oh, sorry, I had my mic on mute. I do have a bit of a cough, sorry, Pete. So if I do end up just not responding at any point, it's because I'm probably coughing my guts out. Luckily, it's not the dreaded virus, if you know what I mean, sort of thing. I had done a test. But yeah, absolutely. I think people will be, contemplating all the different strategies. I reckon what a lot of people will do is start on the original one they planned, where they will end up obviously wanting to come into the pits, and if they end up falling back down the order and need a recovery drive, maybe they'll go for that ambitious no-stop strategy. I think that's what a lot of people tried to do last time out into Lagos, but it's whether or not it catches people out. That's the big question of it, really, isn't it? And I'm going to have to wait and see for that one. I mean, it's a Petit Le Mans, you mentioned it before, isn't it? That's Road Atlanta's sort of famous sort of race, I suppose, and sort of being famously known as that. Have you ever covered Le Mans? That's the question I've always wanted to ask you, Pete, because obviously you did the Nürburgring 24, or is it sort of an ambition that you may be hoping to see happen in the next couple of years?
It's right up the top of the list, yeah. The Le Mans, obviously is the biggest race in the world for most, for most drivers and most teams, and obviously, there's Le Mans, there's the Monaco Grand Prix, and there's the Indy 500, and those are three of the main races. So yeah, I mean, to Le Mans would be a huge dream to commentate on that. But do you know what? Equally, races like Petit Le Mans at Road Atlanta, the Rolex 24 at Daytona is right up there. The Sebring 12 Hours, the IMSA WeatherTech Championship. I mean, for anyone looking for a new series to get involved and watch, I couldn't recommend it any higher. It's got a great presence in the esports world now as well, particularly here on iRacing with a lot of the tracks and cars and series and what have you. But to watch the real thing, and you've got drivers like, for example, Kevin Magnussen, former F1 driver. It took him a few races to get into his groove, but now he's in it. I would just say, look how big a smile is on Kevin Magnussen's face, and compare it to the smile that wasn't on his face when he was in F1.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because it's a bit sort of slightly going off the other way, but I mean, it was still sticking with F1 drivers and endurance racing. Obviously, Fernando Alonso went and tried to do the Indy 500. Didn't quite go to plan for him, I don't believe. But then you've got, I think, Sebastian Vettel. You see, I think he'd be a fantastic candidate to jump into sort of IMSA racing, Blancpain, or any of those sort of endurance races, those sort of machinery, because I just don't think he's ever going to get back to the heights that he was at Formula 1. And I think he's such a talented driver and such a clever driver. I think he could be a real asset to any sort of GT championship, shall we say, and really perform strong, because they are interchangeable. A lot of people see Formula 1 drivers, they're just Formula 1 drivers, but when you get down to it, they're very talented racing drivers, and the majority of them will be able to jump in anything and go pretty quickly, get to grips with it pretty quickly as well. So, I think Sebastian Vettel could be one to look out for the future. I think it could be very interesting if he jumped in something else.
I agree. Actually, I think he could be. And the thing is, Sebastian's he's a rhythm driver, isn't he? When he gets into a groove and he's in a car he's comfortable with, he's almost unstoppable. I mean, how many times did we see him do that in the Red Bull days, when he's got to really get, absolute door banging or wheel banging, combat? That's where it all usually falls apart. But actually, but you're right. He would make a very good endurance racing driver. That is for certain. I love the fact that Sebastian Vettel has absolutely no social media whatsoever. Not interested.
No, it's mad, isn't it? It actually makes it quite hard to sort of follow him and follow his sort of race, I suppose, debriefs. Oh, actually, the checker flag's just dropping. I can see the little man waving ferociously on the left-hand side of the screen. So let's get back to talking about what this race is all about, and you can take us through the grid, Pete.
Indeed, yes. Ryan Parkins will start on pole position alongside Joel Eulenbroek, with Adam Dillman and Miguel Freitas on row 2. Milan Phaetons and Niall de Kuiper will start on row 3, followed by Matteo Sufi, with Matthew Crisp, Michael Blake and Sam Bentham. Jaco van der Plat will start 11th, followed by Jens Goossens, with the 7th row of the grid consisting of Jeroen Kaiser and Lewis Ward. Mark Woodhouse, Carl Sharkey, Paul Riga, Austin Greatorex, Josh Cam and Gavin Halls round out your top 20, with Lee Damer, Paul Godden and PJ Claessens rounding out the 23-car grid. I would imagine we will not have to wait too long for the drivers to get going, and in fact, the lights are being prepared. They begin to illuminate. Ryan Parkins, the King Hippo, on pole position. We are racing for 40 minutes. Here in Braselton, Georgia, off down towards turn 1 they go. And it's a perfect getaway for Ryan Parkins. Into turn 1 he goes. And from pole position, we know how consistent a driver he is. Need to be the quick boys. They'll need to come through and upset that rhythm if they want to try and win this race. But Ryan Parkins leads the way. And we've got a number of cars off in the background.
We have indeed, yeah. Joel Eulenbroek was one of them. He's crashed a couple of times, actually. Just trying to have a look at it. Niels de Cooper is one of them as well. Jens Goossens. So a couple of drivers off in the background. But look at this Adam Delmont catching right up to Ryan Parkins at the start. But look at Lewis Ward trying to make moves on Jaco van der Plat around the outside. It's ambitious, it's brave, it's absolutely sensational. If he can pull it off, I think he's got a car in his way, actually. So he won't be happy to thank Michael Blake for blocking him off, but he's still got an opportunity, and there we go, flashing the lights, meaning get out of my way, don't block me again please, because I'm trying to make some kind of point here. Sam Bentham is following him through potentially. Jaco van der Plat in the Alcantec car is going to be a moving obstacle, I fear.
Oh yes, it's Crisp versus Ward. Remember, this is the championship battle as well, don't forget, but Ward goes through on Crisp then. In fact, I do apologise. It is Van der Plat, his teammate. Sorry, my apologies. Knew I would make that mistake. So, yeah, Michael Blake is the kind of cork in the bottle for Lewis Ward. He wants to get off and away in hot pursuit of Matthew Crisp, and he does so. Blake doesn't fight it too hard. So, Lewis Ward through. Now, how about our leader? Josh Cam has made an exceptional start to the race from 19th on the grid. He's now up to 9th after one lap. Absolutely amazing from Josh Cam. And he's got Mark Woodhouse behind him, Jaco van der Plat in front. And, if he has anything like the pace he had in race 1, he could be very much a racer to keep an eye on. Gavin Hall is a much steadier beginning for him. still back in 15th place.
Yeah, not the most ideal start for him, and he's got a couple of seconds to find until he gets the next driver as well, so he's not going to be carving through the orders quite so quickly. However, he does have another 38 minutes until he has to do something about trying to think about winning this race. Matthew Crisp, however, is overtaking Milan Phaetons if he can get alongside, which it just about has. He's going to be on the outside. It's going to be an awfully brave and audacious move, a late braking manoeuvre by Matthew Crisp, and I'll tell you what, he made it look easy, didn't he?
Oh, he did, yeah, really timed that perfectly, got the run out. Oh, a little bit wide though on the exit to turn 10A, that 10B, sorry, that'll really kind of compromise his exit as Delmont puts in the fastest lap of the race, about 0.06 of a second quicker than Parkin, so he's right there. Crisp a little bit faster again, a 10th quicker than the leaders, so could be quite close between them in not too distant future. Freitas and Van de Plat having a bit of a ding-dong here, coming up into turn 3. Meanwhile, Lewis Ward desperately trying to get through and get onto the case of Matthew Crisp, his championship rival. And, well, we saw what Lewis Ward could do with a mangled race car in race 1. This car is looking in tip-top shape. Let's see what he can do here as, whoop, sells the dummy. Coming into turn 6, makes his way through, and Phaetons thinks, after you, I'll follow.
Yeah, it was a pretty good move, wasn't it? Oh, that's not decent. No, Miguel Phaeton spins round Lewis Ward. Lewis Ward is huge for the championship because look at the train of cars that's overtaken him here. Lewis Ward drops outside. Well, he's just inside the top 15, and this is a recovery drive now. That's what he's going to have to do. He's done one already this race. He hasn't got as much damage as he did before. All of a sudden, Milan Phaetons is actually going behind Sam Bentham, so this is dramatic stuff because Ward and Bentham aren't that far away on championship points. Ward's going to have to do something rather drastic here to try and get his lead in the championship and maintain it.
Oh dear, that is really unlucky there for Lewis Ward. It seemed like just a little bit of a checkup. That can happen at that turn 7. You can either go in really hot and try and sort of carry the speed through and hope that you don't run wide on the exit, or you can go sort of slow in and fast out. And often, you know, the textbook way to drive a Porsche quickly on a corner like that is slow in and fast out, using the traction advantage of the rear engine layout over the driven wheels. But oh, that really caught Lewis Ward out there, and Phaeton's just running into the back of him. But this is interesting now as well. This isn't ideally what Gavin Halls would want either, because Gavin Halls is wanting to focus on making his way through the pack and scoring good points, but now he's got Lewis Ward right behind him. Wonder how this one's going to shake out.
Well, that's exactly it, isn't it? We're looking at a championship battle here. Now, the best thing to do for both of these drivers would be to work together to get through, and then they can start arguing in 30 minutes time when they've done all the pit stops, or potentially not even done the pit stops yet, get in the pits and then start the race afresh for 2 laps of sprint racing or something. But it's whether or not they decide to do that. They might start lunging up each other's insides. Drivers do have a rather large pride and a lot of pride, and a rather big ego, and it's whether or not they want to put that to the side and think tactically. A lot of the best drivers tend to do so, and that's why they end up winning championships. And I would expect these drivers know that the best thing to do would be to work together.
There is an alternative theory. I agree with you. I think that that's exactly what they need to do. There is an alternative theory here that may be about to be dispelled. This is not the usual absolute full send Gavin Halls we normally see, where there's really decisive overtakes and sometimes too decisive. But I wonder if he's keeping one eye on that fuel gauge. I do wonder, because I would expect him to perhaps carve through the field a bit quicker, given his pace in race 1. But I wonder if he's maybe going, and of course, if you can sit in somebody's draft, obviously it makes the fuel save game a lot easier. Tantalizing. And you know what the great part is? We don't really know, and that's far more exciting when you don't know. If you do know what's going to happen, well, what's the fun in that? But it's anticipating what might happen here. Is Ryan Parkin's having to go very much on the defensive from Delmont, and Crisp now in the battle as well. Interesting. So Matthew Crisp really on the pace, but he's getting into a bit of argy-bargy there with Delmont, making, Delmont spins. Oh, dearie me. Crisp, he doesn't mind a bit of door banging, does he? Gee whiz.
Excite cars can't seem to catch a break wherever they go. I mean, they've been span out in pretty much every race that we've been featuring here on this championship so far, and that one I don't think was really any of their fault for Adam Delmont. He just seemed to get nudged a little bit wide, and he's still on, struggling with his car to get back on. And look at that rear wing; it's not looking that hot, is it? It's rather got a weird angle. It might be good turning right or left or something, but it's not certainly very balanced.
No, I see Carl Sharkey coming into the pits. I think he was involved in that early pile-up on lap 1 coming down the S's, and I think he might be coming in to get his fast repair and do his mandatory pit stop as well, or not mandatory, taking his scheduled pit stop. That's a better word for it. So, Josh Cam doing what Josh Cam does, just quietly picking his way through the field, not making mistakes, and he's got right onto the back of Sam Bentham here. And I tell you what, if Crisp and Parkins get into a bit of argy-bargy, and of course, remember that of course they got into a lot of argy-bargy in race 1, so that's quite likely. So Josh Cam and Sam Bentham are right in the fight here, actually.
They are indeed, yeah. Matthew Crisp and Ryan Parkins obviously still about 6 tenths away from each other. However, there was about a 6-second gap between these two drivers, Bentham and Cam, and Parkins and Crisp. It's come down by about 2 seconds, and realistically, Bentham will probably be wishing that he had any other driver apart from Josh Cam up behind him, because Josh won't care about working together. All he wants is, to win or to get as high up as he possibly can, get some podiums. Doesn't care about championship at all. Whereas Bentham is probably seeing an opportunity here. Ward is down the order. Obviously Delmont's fallen down as well, and realistically he's only got Crisp and Parkins ahead of him in the championship, who are ahead of him on the road. And I think Bentham will be having, he's let almost Josh Cam go through there so he can try and catch up to the top two. Maybe knows that Cam has got the pace. Bentham even admitted last week in the interview that he doesn't have the extra tenth or two that the rest of the drivers have. Maybe that's why he's let Cam through. Maybe that's why he's trying to follow him as closely as possible. Now, use that draft. No fuel saving, or maybe there is a fuel saving. I don't know on the strategy. This is, like you said before, Pete, this is the beauty of it. We don't know. We can't see how much fuel is in the tank of these cars, so we are really playing a guessing game.
We are, yeah, we are playing a guessing game, that is for sure. We're just coming up to a quarter distance now, and now this should be interesting to see what Josh Cam can do now that he's got a bit of clean air, and we can see what sort of pace he's got underneath that number 7 car. So 122.1 for Parkins, 22.2 for Crisp, 21.8 for Cam. So Cam is the fastest man on the track at the moment.
He is indeed, and I'll tell you what, I've just seen that, we're speaking of championship before, Bart Delmont has put in the chat saying that he's updated the championship standings based off race 7, which was obviously race 1 here tonight. And I can tell you, Gavin Halls has got 143 points. Lewis Ward has dropped down to second place. He's got 135, and Lewis Ward's not looking so hot in this race either. Gavin Halls is only just ahead of him, so you never know. So it looks like Halls has taken a good margin in that first race. Matthew Crisp, 132 points. So only 11 points difference between Gavin Halls and Matthew Crisp. And look where Crisp is, he's second, and look where Halls is, he's ninth. This could be a big flip for the championship. They're going to have to try and bring something out the bag here. Ryan Parkins has slipped away even further, but if he carries on at the top, then he's going to close the gap just a touch. Sam Bentham is the first driver that's not inside the 100-point margin. He's in 5th place still.
This is perfect for Sam Bentham because, Josh Cam is putting on a really hot pace, but Bentham's able to match it by sitting in the draft behind. I mean, he's still got to run the lines. He's still got to run an amazing pace, but really good. Here comes Crisp then. Big lunge into turn 1. He might just get it done as they're going to come. Oh, dear, this is nervous. Now, Parkins has got the inside line as well, going in nice and tidy, gets the position back, but this will be costing them huge amounts of time, and Cam and Bentham will be on top of them in no time. But Crisp, wanted to hit the front as quickly as he could, and I wonder, this may well provoke a pit stop possibly from Ryan Parkins, because this is not what he needs to be able to lay down the pace he's got. As Crisp behind him is, this is costing multiple seconds per lap. This is going to be a lap times in the 23s, possibly the 24s, just for those couple of sort of overtakes.
I mentioned 6 seconds, and in fact it went down to 5 seconds between Crisp and Cam. It's down to 3.2 between Cam and Crisp now, and I tell you what, you're right, a pit stop could be key. But is anybody else getting those flashbacks to race 1 as they went through the first section of the course with Crisp trying to chase down Parkins? I thought he was going to go for a lunge. That was never on. He's gone for a lunge now. To be fair, this one is on. Parkins holds him up. The gap has now been slashed to under 3 seconds, 2.8, and it's falling all the time as Chris looks on the inside of Parkins. I think he's going to have the move done and dusted. Both are going to be slow out the corner. Chris is going to be in the lead across the line, but is he going to have to defend from Parkins? Parkins maybe knowing a little bit smarter than that, thinking about the long race. He was, well, look at that. Cam was 2.5 seconds quicker on that lap than Parkins and Chris were. This is going to be closing right up.
This is going to be fascinating now, because I feel that Matthew Chris might have pace here, and it look already pulling away from Parkins. So we'll see what Chris can do. But I think the two drivers are going to keep a close eye on here is Chris and Cam, to see what their comparative pace is and see how that'll play out across the course of the race. I think it could be between those two guys at the moment. It's Gavin Hall's trying to make his way through on Michael Blake, and oh dear, Lewis Ward having a think about it there and deciding to back out of it as well. But these guys need the points in the championship battle, especially with Chris looking strong at the front of the pack. Oh, what an intriguing race, and this is before we throw the potential of pit stops in.
Less than 2 seconds now between Cam and Parkins. It's you're right, it is a very interesting race to see how it's going to unfold. And of course, Cam and Parkins are both Porsche Sport drivers. They'll be working together. I'm sure Parkins won't be wanting to give away any more championship points than he has to. But how selfish is Cam going to be? I don't know how the team dynamics work. Will there be team orders, or will there just be an all-out fight between each other and the best man wins sort of thing? But Bentham is deciding that he's going to rally across the line. Oh, I thought he was going to collect Josh Cam. I think, Pete, you were thinking the same.
That was a slow motion. That was like, no. But,
please stop.
That's the bit like the bit with the that Peter Kay joke about the biscuit falling into your tea. And like, no, you just sort of see it coming from a mile off. But Josh Cam, that probably won't have even raised an eyebrow there. You just carry on as normal. Bit of turbulence, not a problem. Sent for a pass around until there's a slot in the air traffic control. We need to. Oh, there's a spin there for Blake, and Greatrex just keeps it full gas and goes by. No problem for Austin. So up to 8 for Greatrex, and Blake having to do a bit of an Austin Powers 6-point turn here to get back going again. Okay. Oh dear, that's a pity for him.
Not looking so healthy now, is it? Speaking of healthy, there's a healthy gap there between Crisp and Parkins now. It has to be said, half a second between them. I thought Parkins would come straight back and attack Crisp, but I think Crisp has found some pace here, Pete, that we hadn't seen them before. We're looking at best lap times. Matthew Crisp on a 1:22.3. Ryan Parkins a 1:21.3. Ryan Parkins a 1:21.7. So, realistically, they're big gaps in their best lap time, and in the previous lap as well. Chris got 0.2 of a second out of Parkins.
He did, and actually, there's a little bit of a blip there for Cam. 0.6 of a second off, quite a bit off his normal pace. So I think that incident might have been a little bit more of a heart stopper than we maybe first gave credit for. We'll see what Josh Cam laps here. He's now broken away from Bentham after Bentham's spin there, or half spin. I think what Cam would maybe like is for Parkins to get back onto the case of Chris, but it's really, you can tell we're poised for a proper grandstand finish, and a lot of it will come down to if the drivers need to take a pit stop, as Ward goes past quite easily into 12th spot. It will be interesting to see how it plays out with the pit stops, if there is one needed after all.
Lewis Ward, the leader of the pitted cars. We always like to bring this up at a certain time in the race when we start to see the drivers come into the pits. But look at that. And more importantly, the reason why I bring it up, Pete, as well, is one, because Lewis Ward was obviously next to Gavin Halls through a lot of this race, and now obviously he's down in 12th place because he's pitted X, Y, Z. We're seeing more cars pitting early in this race than we normally do as well. Normally, we're only 17 minutes into this race, but nearly halfway, but normally we've still only seen about 5 or 6 drivers come in for an early pit stop. Now we've got nearly half the field, well, it is half the field, in fact, pretty much, have come in for a pit stop already. So maybe they're sort of fully expecting that it has to be a one-stop race, not a zero-stop. Could that be an early indication? We'll have to wait and see, I suppose, because Gavin Halls and Mark Woodhouse and Austin Greatorex are certainly slowing each other up at the moment.
Yeah, they are a bit. So when you time, if the pit stop is necessary, when you time that pit stop, very, very important then. So Gavin Hall's getting a bit of a draft here on Mark Woodhouse. He pops out quite early and makes his intention clear, goes past Woodhouse. Woodhouse pretty decent on the brakes there, but Halls goes by. And yeah, that was clever from Gavin Halls there. He obviously felt like he had the overspeed and he was better on the brakes and made his intention known. So Woodhouse knew that it wouldn't have been a surprise to Woodhouse that Gavin was going to make a move there. So Hall's now up to 6th and critically clean air. Let's keep an eye on the lap time of Gavin Halls this time by.
Yeah, he's made up 14 positions so far in this race, but amazingly, that isn't the most amount of positions gained by a single driver. That's an honour held by Josh Cam at the moment. He's gained 16 places. And a lot of the time we see, like halfway through the race or 3/4 of the way through the race, a lot of people gaining a lot of places because half the grid has basically stopped him for their pits. But Josh Cam has done that basically without pit stop assistance. I mean, we saw how early he got to the front of the order, which is very impressive from Josh, it has to be said. He's going to be a good contribution to this championship, isn't he? I'm looking forward to seeing how he develops and how he raises the bar and pushes the other drivers around them. But Porsche Sport will be certainly very happy to have him on the grid.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, Josh Cam is one of the very best drivers in the roster for Porsche Sport, along with Jacob Toffs. And let's take the opportunity to have our weekly call out for Jacob Toffs to come and race with us. To come and teach these boys, these older boys, a lesson.
Exactly. Yeah,
but Jacob's busy sitting GCSEs or whatever teenagers do these days.
Yeah, that's what they do for fun, isn't it? Sitting GCSEs. They probably did that 2 months ago. He's on summer holiday, isn't he? Get him out here. Get him on the sim. Yeah,
no excuse.
Exactly. Greatorex with a fantastic move on Mark Woodhouse, by the way. And I have to say, we sort of often have a little bit of a chat towards the end of the race of driver of the day sort of thing. It's something I like to bring into a few of my broadcasts now. A huge slide by Greatorex, though. The rear tyres won't be enjoying that. A driver of the day style of thing. And for that 3rd place in race number 1, he was no mistakes at all, wasn't he? He was closer to the front than he was to 4th place as well. And he's driving very well here, is Austin Greatorex. He's up to 7th place without a pit stop, without taking advantage of other people's pit stops as well, crucially. He's got to be sort of a name to be shouting out for driver of the day. He's been absolutely fantastic as well, because obviously a lot of people have had hiccups this evening.
Well, it would be an interesting one because Austin his publicity has gone through the roof this week because he was in a tabloid newspaper with his shirt off this week.
Oh! I'm sure that was a lovely image to see.
Well, Austin, as we might have mentioned, Austin used to be in the army, so he's a big lad. Like I wouldn't argue with him. Although I pretend to, I wouldn't actually argue with him because he'd hurt me. He was in I won't give the name of the tabloid newspaper, but yeah, in a tabloid newspaper with his shirt off.
Oh.
Swinging his shirt around his over the top of his head.
Is there a particular reason why, or was it just a slow news day?
I actually can't remember. Probably slow news day.
I was going to say, I imagine it'll be a slow news day. What certainly hasn't been slow though is this battle at the front. Josh Cam has caught up. Top 3 battle now, not just the top 2 with Crisp and Parkins. Josh Cam has caught right up. You said there was a bit of a blip. The blip is long gone because Josh Cam's last lap time was 1:21.7. which was a good nearly half a second quicker than Matthew Crisp, who's leading this race. Sam Bedford has been left a little bit, but Josh Cam absolutely flying.
He is flying. I tell you who else is flying. That last time by on a clear lap, Gavin Hall's put in his personal best, 1:21.6, so about the same pace as Cam, interestingly. So Hall's flying, but it's got a lot of work to do. We've just gone past the halfway point. Crisp still leads, but talking of Porsche Sport dynamic, they will do whatever they need to do to help the overall cause of the team. And if Ryan Parkins believes that Cam is quicker, and that is the case, about to the tune of about 3 or 4 tenths a lap at the moment, Ryan will not hold Josh up. He'll say, right, if you can go and get on Matthew Crisp's case, he will allow him to do that. Without the team manager coming on the radio. So that's what Matthew Crisp has got to deal with right now. He's got a two-pronged attack to stave off.
Well, I can tell you that apparently Bart Dalemans has been in the chat again, and he's currently furiously doing calculations in the background. Matthew Crisp will take the championship lead by 3 points on Gavin Hall if it ended right now. So it's still incredibly close, and we've mentioned that Hall's is absolutely flying. I think he's taken another couple of tenths. In fact, he's taken seconds off Miguel Freitas. Last lap a 121.9, Freitas a 123.18, so 1.2 seconds. Gavin Hall's catching on Miguel Freitas to try and crack the top 10. Brian Parkins doesn't seem to have the ultimate pace, and here comes Josh Cam. And if that was letting him go, he was leaving it rather late into the braking zone.
Yeah, I think just trying to maximise the lap time there as well. So now Josh Cam, what a meter! It is just depressing how good he is with virtually no practice. Just straight into the championship and bang, straight up the front. And if he finishes anywhere in these top few spots, a double podium on debut would be very impressive. Of course, Josh finished on the podium in the ARA Porsche Cup here on iRacing a few months ago, did so by being so consistent while others smashed into each other basically, and that's very much. And the thing is, it's not as if Josh just dithers. It's not as if he dithers around and lets other people crash. He's on a real. He's 99, a bit of a Jensen Button sort of way. He's 99% as quick as the ultimate pace. But the difference is he's not making the mistake, and therefore collects the points. And he's noticeably taking visible track. Oh no. Oh, that was a bit. Oh dear.
Yeah, your heart always stops when that happens, doesn't it? But look at the gap already.
An internet blip. Yeah, he's pulling visible time before his car disappeared there for a second. But yeah, he's pulling big chunks of time here out of Crisp. And Crisp, we might well see Matthew Crisp pop into pit lane here, possibly.
I think he would be good if he did, to be honest, isn't he? Because he's going to get overtaken, and that looks like a dive to the inside. And here he comes into the pit lane. Yeah, Matthew Crisp. I was going to say, that's quite incredible that you've managed to call that, Pete. Normally we get it horribly wrong, don't we?
Yeah, but you often struggle to predict it. But I think Matthew Crisp saw the writing on the wall there and thought, right, let's not get involved in another ding dong. Now I think we'll see Josh Cam and Ryan Park. Gavin Hall's in, so that I think that dispels. I don't think an all the way to the end without a stop is going to be possible. I think that tells us that stop is going to be required. Lewis Ward has already had his, and I think he's going to come out behind Crisp, but I don't know if he might well come out in front of Hall's. Yes, he will, quite considerably so. Interesting.
Yeah. That's quite interesting for Ward, isn't it? Because that is essentially an undercut we've just seen. And that's
huge.
Quite massive, because Gavin Hall's a clear air, essentially, since Lewis Ward has come in. I mean, he had a bit of traffic at the beginning, but since then he's been putting in some quick lap times. And just looking at Lewis Ward's lap times, I mean, his ultimate lap time, I think he's actually got the quickest lap of the race, to be fair, 121.0, which is quite incredibly quick, to be honest. It's about 3 tenths quicker, actually, than Matthew Crisp, who's got the second fastest lap as far as I can see. So Lewis Ward absolutely flying, but his previous lap times weren't all those, they weren't something to write home about. They were sort of pretty decent, but they weren't exactly touching 21s like Gavin Hall's was.
Yeah, interesting one there. I mean, Lewis Ward, I mean, I think it's unfortunately a bit of a story of what could have been for Lewis, because he obviously was just an unfortunate spin on lap 1 in the first race, and obviously tapped from behind by Milan Phaetons in this race, and showing he's got the pace as Gavin Hall's now stuck behind Lee Damer. I don't think Lee's pitted, has he?
Lee Damer has pitted, yes. This is actually race position.
Well, there you go. Okay, so, but then I think, decides to not fight it too hard. Gavin goes through. up to 10th position. So, but I tell you what, Gavin's going to have to pull something really out the locker here if he wants to challenge the pace that Lewis Ward has shown.
He will indeed, actually. I just remember, I was thinking lead team, and we don't remember him, he was involved in something earlier on. It's because he had that spin earlier on going into the last corner and was pushed out wide when he was racing for the race lead, didn't he? And then he came straight into the pits, and I think that was a lap 3 or 4, to be honest. So he's been one of the drivers that have, pitted for a long time now, one of the first drivers to pit. So at the moment, provisionally, podium, you could argue, is Matthew Chris, Lewis Ward, Gavin Halls. Josh Cam really is the driver we have to keep an eye out now, and what lap times he's doing. He just pulled 2 tenths on Ryan Parkins at 22.01, so pretty much 22 dead. And you've got to have a look and see how far away. He's 40 seconds clear of Gavin Halls at the moment. How far is he ahead? He's 25 seconds ahead of Matthew Crisp, sorry. And a pit lane is about 30 seconds. So not a big enough gap at the moment by Josh Cam. Maybe he's going to go long. I imagine he will with that clean air.
He's going to go very long. Yeah, I think he's going to go very long. Clean air is exactly what Josh Cam needs, and just put in those quick laps and see where it shakes out. And yeah, Gavin Hall's a 10th barely a 10th quicker than Ward there as well. So it's going to be fascinating to see where they feature in this battle as well. What an interesting race we've had here at Road Atlanta. It always provides first and foremost a really stern challenge for the driver. That's what I think makes Road Atlanta so special. There is the most obvious overtaking part is down into turn 10A and 10B at the end of the back straight, but Road Atlanta is more about who can get through a long race without putting the car off the road, because it is that difficult a racetrack.
Well, I think from the tracks we've seen so far, they haven't really tested the driver just as a racetrack sort of thing, like tested the drivers on their own. Whereas here, Austin Greatorex jumping into the pits, by the way. Whereas Road Atlanta, we've seen drivers, very high standard drivers, chuck it off with cold tyres. Lewis Ward at the beginning of race 1, that was just cold tyres. Back end went loose, couldn't run as wide as he maybe wanted to, had to put some extra lock on, ended up spinning. We saw qualifying, a few drivers really struggling as well. So, it's not just the racing, it's not just the traffic or the tyre management or fuel management that's really testing the drivers. It's nice to see the track really pushing the drivers as well. And really, you don't see that many tracks do that, do you? You see the likes of the Nürburgring, probably the most obvious one to test a driver just on getting around the circuit. But apart from that, Road Atlanta is a bit of an enigma.
It's much like Sebring, actually. Sebring, obviously, the bumps and the curbs. I think it's the circuits in North America. If you were to pick a region where the average standard or the average excitement level of the circuits, I think North America has got it absolutely tied down. One thing that's not tied down is the front left wheel of Joel Eulenbroek's machine. Oh dear. So, just loses it on the way in turn 1, and you're onto the grass, and it is like ice. Biff. Oh my. Ouch.
Yeah, not really what Joel was trying to do there, I'm sure. Mathieu Soufi, though, he's lost 5 places, but he has been in the pits, and hopefully he'll overtake some more. Having a good little battle with Adam Delmont here as Austin Greatorex has come out the pits and blended back into 11th place just behind lead. Well, I say just behind, he's about 16 seconds behind lead Deemer, but still quite impressive. Jerome Kaiser is in the pit lane now. He's been overtaken by a fair few drivers. You can see his progress on the left-hand side of your screen, but up the inside here goes Adam Delmont on Mathieu Soufi. And we haven't really featured this sort of top 10 battle, shall we say, the sort of mid-pack battle that much this time round, Pete. But it is always interesting racing as well. They're often quite a bit closer than the front one.
Yeah, there is a really, really competitive midfield in this championship with a lot of drivers within a very close amount of time, and just shows you if you're just not quite on it in qualifying, you can be severely punished and have a lot of work to do from there. Now, we would be biased, of course, but I have to say this new Simracersworld Esport card does look fantastic. I do like it. I'm trying to think of what livery it reminds me of, but it looks absolutely looks superb. I do have to say. Now, Ryan Parkins in pit lane, as is Miguel Freitas, as is Paul Riga there as well. So this might see pit lane getting a bit busier now as well. Parkins throws up to the pole sitters pit garage. Crisp comes through. That's not necessarily a surprise. He did have a little bit of an advantage before the stops. But is Lewis Ward going to come out in front? Is Gavin Hall's going to come out in front? No. So Parkins now in 5th, but still, who do we have to pit? Woodhouse, Bentham, and Cam still have to pit.
Yeah, so 3 drivers. They've only got 7.5 minutes to do so, and I think it's pretty clear that it is going to have to be a pit. It's going to have to be a one-stop race, isn't it? And to be honest, Cam, it'd be interesting to see, but I think he's got a big enough gap, you know, because he's about 25 seconds. Matthew Crisp has actually done a really good job of keeping consistent lap times since he's come out the pits on Josh Cam. It just depends on how much Josh Cam has managed to fuel save, potentially, because sometimes we do see weird times where drivers are in the pit lane for too long. Oh,
so Josh Cam in the pit lane now, and as is Sam Bentham. So we're now going to see where this plays out. I have to say, it's been a super drive from Sam Bentham. One little mistake, which he managed to get away with, but driving really, really well in that West Tech team machine. Cam on the way, and Chris coming through the final curve. This is going to be very, very tight, actually. So Cam is on the move. Chris coming into turn 1 right now. And, this is going to be so, so tight as well. Cam gasses it up. Here comes Chris. He's going to appear out of nowhere. Oh, so Cam just holds onto it there. So Chris very fast through the pit cycle. And it turns out to be a very good call for Chris to pop into pit lane before they got into a door-to-door battle.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Because he's gotten a half-decent pace out of the pit lane. He was in free air, and so was Cam, but they have still kept within about 8/10 of each other. So I think that's credit to Matthew Crisp, really, isn't it? Because he was, potentially overtaken. It wasn't much of a fight back, but he just did the sensible thing, came in, was potentially a little bit lucky with where he came out, because obviously it's pretty much guesswork where you're going to come out. Unless you've got a teammate in your ear trying to figure it out or do all the calculations for you. And he's just put in some good, consistent lap times. And as I said before, he's around about the same lap times that Josh Cam was putting in himself. And now he's in the slipstream opportunity. He just needs an extra 2/10 on Cam to really have the slipstream working well for him. And then you never know. We could see a fight for the race lead. We've only got about just over 5 minutes left.
Yeah, it's been a really top battle at the front of the field. A really strategical battle as well as the outright lap pace. But again, late on in the race, Gavin Halls is starting to come strong again. That time by, goodness, nearly a second quicker, about 9/10 of a second quicker than Lewis Ward. So let's wonder what Gavin Halls can do here. Because this is turning into a bit of a kind of typical performance for Gavin Howard. Yeah, that late race pace is quicker than anyone else.
I'll tell you what, I don't know if it's about you, Pete. I think Gavin looks a little bit more stable than Ward at the moment, doesn't it? I think maybe Ward's just driving in his mirrors, maybe just a touch. It is easier to chase than be chased. We will give Lewis Ward that one, but to win championships, you have to soak this kind of pressure up, don't you? And at the moment, Halls is doing a fantastic job. I'm just hoping Bart Dalemans is in the chat. I know he's watching this. Is he doing the calculations as we go? Can you just put in very quickly into the spreadsheet what would happen if we finished like this, Bart? And let us know how things are going to be standing up, because that is going to be fascinating. But look at this. Gavin Halls and Lewis Ward, his calculations could be in vain, because Halls goes for the move on Ward. Up the inside into 10A, and I believe he's going to have the job done very early. He didn't even have to worry about 10B.
Yeah, Ward just seems to be really struggling for grip there. Just couldn't quite get the car turned in when he wanted to as well. So Halls goes by. A couple of laps to go here, maybe 3 to go, I think, here at Road Atlanta. And yeah, it's been a very strong meeting actually for Gavin Halls. Obviously winning race 1, and to come from 20th on the grid to 5th as it stands right now, very, very strong. Crisp in 2nd, so yeah, so it's going to be, again, I tell you what, Jack, this championship is going to go right to the wire. I think that's a given.
Yeah, well, I think Bart Dalemans, he listened to the call, but I think he worked these out before Gavin Halls overtook Lewis Ward. So take it with a pinch of salt. But I think Gavin Hall's going to be on 158 points, 1 point clear of Matthew Crisp, who's obviously in second place at the moment, and then Ward with 151 points, so 7 points down. That is all provisional, because there are penalties to be decided, and also, as I said, I think Bart figured that out before Halls actually overtook Ward. So again, a little bit of a touch and go, but there's certainly not going to be much in it, put it that way. But I suppose, obviously, because it's all provisional, Pete, that Matthew Crisp on Ryan Parkin's move in race number 1 going through the S's, that's probably going to be the one that is going to stick out to potentially impact the championship the most, because it was just a huge dive up the inside and completely took Parkins out.
There's going to be that. There's going to be that, and there's other incidents. I would highlight the qualifying incident where going around the final corner, as Ward just hangs on to it, but big moment there for Lewis Ward, really struggling with grip now as well. I would certainly think the stewards will take a look at the qualifying incident where Crisp was on a purple lap and coming through the final corner, Halls was slow on the last corner, right on the racing line, and I would think the stewards will take a look at that because not on in my book, to be honest.
Yeah, well, hopefully, if anybody out there is racing and watching this, do please save the race replay, because Bart Dalemans may well need to look back at it, and unfortunately he accidentally quit out of the session, I believe, and just didn't save it, or something along those lines. He couldn't save it, basically. So if you are watching this, maybe Porsche Sport, I know you're watching this, tell your drivers to make sure you save the replay so you can look at any penalties that you need to be looked at, sort of thing. Very important you do that, because if there's no evidence, then there's no evidence. They can't give out any penalties, and people may want to send in some appeals. Be interesting to see if they do actually penalise for qualifying, because I know in real life series they may well do, but not after the races are finished. They would tend to do that obviously between qualifying and race 1, but obviously we didn't have that time, so it's kind of a hard one to figure out, isn't it?
It is. There are post-race penalties that can be applied, but at the discretion of the stewards if they deem it necessary. So, yeah, there's definitely ways to do it, and I think it's something that if you're going to have group qualifying, you have to enforce that it's run correctly. Otherwise, you need to run a solo qualifying, in my view. So, yeah, it's one that'll rumble on. I think that for sure that the provisional points. One thing we can guarantee is it's going to be very, very close between those top protagonists, Crisp, Ward and Halls. But Josh Cam, well, straight into the championship, pops in and gets it on the podium in race 1, and at the moment coming down the back straight for the final time in the lead, and his first ever meeting in Simracersworld European Porsche Cup competition will go to Josh Cam as he negotiates turn 10A and B for the final time, flashes the lights, and Josh Cam, the man from Yorkshire, wins here at Road Atlanta. Super drive right through the pack from 19th on the grid. Matthew Crisp steadying the ship in second, and Ryan Parkins steady as ever in third.
He's saying steady as ever. Sam Bentham as well in the WesTech N Sport car. It's not actually the N Sport car, but you see where we're getting at. As well in 4th place. Really good shown by him. Gavin Hall's gaining 15 positions into 5th. Lewis Ward ended up in 6th as well. So a lot of the sort of championship protagonists, Pete, coming through the order in that one, in that reverse grid race. And even the likes of Lewis Ward, who we thought, potentially race finishing incident, he still did a fantastic job at coming in 6th place. He's still in the championship hunt. So the protagonists coming to the fore.
Yeah, they were all there scoring points. There was no driver that actually had a shocker meeting of nobody's given a free kick to their rivals in this particular meeting, and that can happen very quickly at Road Atlanta as well. So yeah, top marks to all our leading drivers who have been mighty impressive today, because I can assure you this is not an easy racetrack to get on with.
It's not an easy racetrack. It's definitely not an easy car, is it, either? Because we've seen a lot of people making mistakes in the car, in the lower series that maybe we've covered in the past. But obviously, these drivers are top notch, and they're still sometimes getting it wrong. So as Joel Ordenbrook comes across the line to take the checkered flag, we now can take you to the scenic view. And also, Pete MacKay, you can take us through the race results.
Indeed. So your winner then, Josh Cam, on his debut meeting here in the Simracersworld European Porsche Cup wins by 1.7 seconds from Matthew Crisp, with Ryan Parkins rounding out the top three. Sam Bentham for Westech Autosport was fourth, with Gavin Halls getting all the way through from 20th up to 5th position. Lewis Ward was sixth, followed by Miguel Freitas, Austin Greatrex, Mark Woodhouse, and Adam Delmont rounds out the top 10. Carl Sharkey was 11th, followed by Matteo Sufi, Jaco van de Plat, Jeroen Kaiser, Michael Blake, Jens Gussens, Lee Deemer, and Milan Phaetons rounding out the top 18 drivers. And the last few, Joel Eulenbroek, Paul Godden, Nels de Kuiper, Paul Riga, and PJ Claessens round out our order here at Road Atlanta. And we have a busy interview room already. Why don't we get our race 2 winner in for a chat and see what he has to say? Josh Cam, hello there, sir. Welcome to the Sim Racers World TV commentary box. You just stroll in here and show us all what it's about.
Oh, well, definitely had some help from a couple of teammates this week to get me up to pace. And at the start of that second race, everything seemed to open up quite nicely for me. Got off to a flying start through just picking the gaps. I hope it was good to watch for everyone.
It certainly was. It was, very, very impressive, Josh. And we were talking. I was talking to Jack before we came online before the broadcast. Now, do tell our viewers about the sim setup you've got, because some have these fancy rigs and fancy steering wheels and fancy screens and all that sort of stuff. But you don't bother with that fancy stuff.
Yeah, we're a bit down budget here. Not just because we're up north, but you know, it's not exactly the airline's heyday, So yeah, I've got the trusty G27 bolted to my nice wooden desk and a low budget fold out chair. I'll try and get you a picture of Peter in case you want to share it.
See, there you go. It's not the tools; it's how you use them. That's that. You've proven that tonight, Josh.
Yeah, it was great, but I tried my best to keep up with Mr. Halls in the first race, and he didn't really miss a beat, and we were generating our lap time so differently. We were braking different places, running speed in and out of different corners. So I followed him as close as I could for a while, but eventually just caught myself out on the brakes there. So very well deserved victory for him in the first one. I couldn't catch him.
And Josh, this has obviously been a great start to, although a belated one at that. It's been a great start to the SRW Porsche Cup. Plans to stay with us for the rest of the season?
I honestly don't know. It will depend on what's going on with the Porsche Sport guys. But if I can make it to the last 2 rounds, I certainly will. I'll try and rock up, because the racing's been great. Some good people to race against in here as well. So I'll say fingers crossed.
Well, we look forward to welcoming you if you can, Josh. Thanks so much for coming to race tonight, and well done on a super win.
Thanks very much, Peter. Cheers, guys, for your commentary.
So that was Josh Cam, our race 2 winner. Let's speak to our race 1 winner, Gavin Halls. Full send, Gav. That was a good day at the office, I would say.
That was a bit better than last round, for sure. For sure. It's a shiny new paint. That's what did it. Brought me good luck. That
orange paint has got to be worth. Well, of course, living in Bahrain, the orange paint with McLaren, it's written in the stars, Gav.
I know. It's almost. I feel a bit good. It wasn't my design. That was all from Johnny Elia at Jill Gardner at PCGB. And Mr. Sharkey arranged it. My new boss.
Oh, very good, very good. That's I like to hear. Now, Gavin, I've been watching your performances closely. You seem to have an edge at the end of the races in that last period of the race. Am I a usual commentator putting 2 and 2 together and making 11, or is that something that you've noticed as well?
No, it's definitely. I just try and take care of the tyres, especially with that reverse grid. I don't want to push too hard in the first few laps anyway, because too much risk. So save the tyres, wait, and then once you get clear air, then start to push.
And final question for me, Gav: how many cars and or golf buggies have you crashed this week?
None. I've done no driving, only on the sim. The first race, I got to tell you, when I got on the grid, I was 2 litres short of fuel. So I had to fuel save the whole race. I was pooing myself.
That was in race 1.
That was in race 1. I was fuel saving the whole way from start to finish to get to the end. I got over the line with 0.10 of a litre in
Oh
the
my.
car.
Kind of a litre. Oh dear. Oh my! Well, there you go. This is why we get you in for an interview to tell these near misses that we wouldn't have actually spotted on the broadcast. So brilliant job, Gavin. And last a serious question this time. It's going to be some championship battle between Lewis, Matthew, Crisp, and at the moment the points are so close. I mean, what's your thoughts going on the last 2 meetings?
It's anyone's. It's anyone's. Yeah, it just we're up and down. You know, I think Matthew seems to be the most consistent, and then it's me or Lewis fighting for who's on top, and it's changing round to round. Lewis killed me last week at the end of Lagos. I just couldn't lay up with him, and then I think maybe this week I had a bit of pace on him. So God knows where we at next, Silverstone. It's not
I
one
should
of my
know
favourites.
that. Yeah,
I should know that as well.
There's plenty of time to go and check it out between now and
Yeah,
then.
go and have a look now.
It is Silverstone.
yeah,
I can tell you it is Silverstone.
It is
And
Silverstone,
then
right?
Catalonia.
It could be anyone's, and the thing I've noticed is Matthew just does really well in the reverse grids. He's always get to the front or near. So like, yeah, I don't know. I couldn't call it. It got me under pressure for sure. I'm working as hard as I ever have.
Well, we're looking forward to calling all the action. Gav, well done on a super meeting, a win and a top 5. Brilliant stuff, and we'll see you next week.
Bill, can I just give a big shout out? Congrats to Josh Cam for turning up and getting the win in race 2, and obviously Shark E-Bikes for stepping in at the last minute and shocking a bit of paint on the car for me. And to you guys, job well done. I'm going to sit back and watch the race now. Chill out.
Aye, crack a cold beer and you can have a really self-indulgent evening now, Gav. You can go, look at that line there. Oh, look at that. Yeah. Oh, how good am I? I love me. You can have an I love me hour and a half.
I've got a T-shirt with "I love me" on it. You know me too well.
That's brilliant. Proper.
Ryan,
you tell you're a proper racing driver.
Ryan's got a T-shirt. It's all about me on his T-shirt. So he'll kill me for saying
that. Brilliant stuff. Great job, Gav, and we'll see you next week.
Cheers, guys. See you later.
Cheers, buddy.
Thanks.
So that is all she wrote then for the round 7 and round 8 of the Simracersworld Porsche Cup. We hope you enjoyed this broadcast here on Simracersworld TV. And myself, Peter MacKay, and Jack Oliphant will see you same time next week for the penultimate meeting of the championship. One not to miss, and we'll see you there. Good night.